Summarize in numerical form.
What people that's been untreated actually recovered from?
Almost 2/3 of people who have been dependent on alcohol not only are untreated, but they still drink without dependence any longer. That may mean they're a controlled drinker, or it may mean they've reduced their problems below a dependence level. That's a big group. Note that people who are treated are not any less likely to be alcoholic. 28% maintain their alcoholism dependence, about a quarter in each case, although more likely to abstain. So treatment has the impact of making people abstain, but it doesn't produce greater recovery. And overall, since a lot more people are untreated, I'll show you that in 1 second, the NIAAA, abstinence lovers that they were, issued a statement at their website. You can go there and find it. Alcoholism isn't what it used to be. 20 years after onset of alcohol dependence, 3/4 of alcoholic people are in recovery. In full recovery. Uh-oh, I left off the Y. More than half of those who are fully recovered drink at low risk levels without symptoms of alcohol dependence. It's the United States government agency. And only 13% of people with alcohol dependence receive specialty alcohol treatment. Did you get it? 87% are untreated by alcohol treatment. Most, the large majority, recover, and most recover without quitting drinking over quite a long period. We're talking about 20 years range of time. Mike, this couldn't happen with heroin, could it?
Well, we don't research it enough to know, but I guess it could.
No. Or how much time?
Another 3 minutes.
What are the policy and treatment implications of what I just told you? Reality. This is the United States government that hates controlled drinking. It hates it. More, not quite as much as this guy, but along those lines. It tells us a whole different way of thinking about addiction and recovery. It says people will get better. In general, there's a tendency for people to get better on their own. And what we should reconceive our thinking of as, what life resources do people have as a way of achieving recovery? That's the task. The task isn't to treat them. It's to enable them to recover by allowing them to have the resources to do so. What do they need to do that, and how do you help them? These are the most effective alcoholism treatments measured in America by repeat clinical trials. Brief interventions are very short duration interactions between a professional and an alcoholic person, where they say, you know, your liver has a problem, or you're drinking at unhealthy levels. Here are some possible resources. We need to talk again in another month. In other words, the provider does virtually nothing but alert the person to the problem, offer some assistance, perhaps involve the family, and track the individual. Motivational enhancement is a way of dealing with people where you say, how's your drinking going? And the person's fine. They say, oh, what's good about it for you? Then you go, okay, great. Have you encountered any problems in your drinking? Tell me about them. Totally non-judgmental, allow them to express, and then focusing on things like their values. Where you say, what's the most important thing in the world to you, or in your life? You know, people say things like, my religion, my health, my kids, whatever. And then you say, describe drinking in relation to those things. The point is, the ball is in the person's court. The therapist's job is to encourage them to make connections. Community reinforcement approach is a way of going out into a person's life, looking at their work life, their family life, their recreational time, and helping them to structure their actual lived experience in life to reinforce sobriety.
1 more minute, Stanton.
In other words, it's completely what's the landscape look like? How do we help that person? All of these 3 treatments are oriented around not a permanent disease. They're thinking about the individual in interaction with their world and in interaction with themselves. And all of them, in a sense, tie back to this natural recovery information, because what they're saying is the best way to help a person is to help them achieve natural recovery by inspiring, encouraging their motivation, by allowing them to develop skills to deal with life, and to help them navigate the reality of their existence in order to accomplish what we want and hope for them. Treatment is a matter of facilitating the natural recovery process, which more or less slowly usually unfolds on its own. A whole different way of thinking of addiction as opposed to a chronic disease that kills people.
I'm going to have to stop.
That was great, and I hated to have to stop him, but I'm afraid we have to stick to time and give Neil a chance to make his presentation. Come again.
Excellent. I see that actually we're going to move this evening towards a vote, an audience vote in terms of what you feel about what the speakers have said. Now, because that may fill some people with anxiety, I want to reassure you there are two things about me that you don't know. One is that I've never managed to get a job that I've applied for and been interviewed for. And the other is I've never won a vote for the people I've been to presentation. So I don't want anybody to have any anxiety about the likelihood of winning this vote. And in a way, there's a serious point there, because after many years of doing research, I realised that there are two reactions that you often get. One is that you do the research and somebody says, but I knew that already. What's the point of telling me something that I already knew? And you think, well, that's a hard one, but at least I did the research. And the other is, I didn't know that, and I don't believe it anyway. And you think, well, what's the point of telling me research that I'm not even going to accept the findings? So sometimes it's tough in research to deliver findings that clash with a prevailing set of views. And in a way, I think if I've done anything recently of that kind, it's question the orthodoxy that has become harm reduction. It's an orthodoxy which grew up in the late 80s and has very much shaped our field for the years since. And I think in a way our field, and it to an extent it's a criticism, and it is not entirely welcome to be received as such, is that I feel that our field is open to be influenced by slogans and grand statements, grand policy statements, and to take up those statements as if it's a single message which has to then be implemented and forget about all the other stuff that's to the side. And in a way, I think that's exactly what has happened in relation to harm reduction. So harm reduction refers to policies, programs, and this will be very familiar to people here, practices that aim primarily to reduce the adverse health, social and economic consequences of the use of legal and illegal psychoactive drugs without necessarily reducing drug consumption. And in a way, I think there's a myth that's written into that statement, which is that you can substantially reduce the harm associated with drug use, drug misuse, without necessarily worrying yourself with a bigger issue of how do you actually reduce the level of drug use or drug misuse. It's a perspective, I think, which has a number of assumptions written into it, and these two will be very familiar. One of those is the idea that HIV is a greater threat to individual public health than drug misuse. And that is echoed and repeated many, many times, and as many of you know, it comes out of the AIDS and Drug Misuse Report from the Advisory Council. Another assumption is that it's possible to reduce drug users' risk behaviour without needing to reduce the overall prevalence of problem drug use. You can reduce the risk behaviour, you don't actually need to worry about how many people are using drugs in the first place. And the third, which I think is deeply problematic, is that there is little or no prospect of recovery from dependent drug use. And that as a result, the best that services can do is enable individuals to continue to use drugs with reduced harm. It's a tiny minority of individuals who will ever become drug-free. And if we want services that meet the needs of the vast majority of people, so the argument goes, you can set aside recovery and focus on reducing harm. Now, I don't know how many people here are smokers or ex-smokers or